And without further ado, I worked on an intro for Sir Richard, and it went on for so long, I thought that I should just not do that. You all know that he's one of the most successful, most creative entrepreneurs in the world, one of the best known and one of the most inspiring, and it's a great honor for Endeavor to have him here. Please welcome Sir Richard Branson.
Thank you.
Where do you get the combination, though, of gumption and resourcefulness and yet financial discipline and all the things that have led you to success? I mean, they're very varied kinds of instincts. How did that happen? I know you started your first company when you were still in school, but how did that evolve?
Well, I've never thought of myself as a businessman. I've never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and I think the most successful entrepreneurs are people who do not set out thinking, how can I make a lot of money? They set out thinking, how can I, change the world by creating something that's going to make a real difference to people's lives, and then, they create that thing, and at the end of the year, if they've created it well, there'll be more money coming in than going out, and somebody else can, didn't know the difference between net or gross, so somebody else had to add up the figures. So I think, I was 15, I left school quite young. I started a magazine to campaign against the Vietnamese War because I thought it was a dreadful war, and I'm afraid us in the West, we do start these dreadful wars. And this magazine, young people, liked it and took it on board. We managed to get enough advertising and enough sales to pay for the printing and the paper costs. And I saw myself as an editor, but soon realized I had to be a little bit of a publisher in order for the magazine to survive. And I think, ever since then, where I've seen situations, I was flying between Puerto Rico and the British Virgin Islands one day, and American Airlines bumped us all. They didn't have enough passengers, so they cancelled the flight. And I had a beautiful lady waiting for me in the Virgin Islands. So, and there were a lot of other people at the airport who were desperate to get there. But I was more desperate than all of them. So I went back to the back of the airport. And I was 26 years old. I managed to blather a plane. I managed to blather a blackboard. I wrote Virgin Airlines on the blackboard. $29 single to Virgin Islands. I came out with my blackboard, and I filled up my first Virgin flight. And when we arrived in the Virgin Islands, I had a big grin on my face. I hope this lady had a big grin on her face too. I sort of suddenly started thinking, well, look, airlines do bump you, and they don't exactly offer the best quality product. And so when I got home, I rang up Boeing and said, have you got any second-hand 747s for sale? And so one thing led on to another.
Yeah, that seems like... that seems like...
And the young lady is now my wife, so that was good. It was worth it.
Seems like a reasonable response to getting bumped.
See, it is fun, isn't it?
So, if you don't think of yourself as a businessman and you don't think of yourself as an entrepreneur, and you had to describe yourself, how would you describe yourself?
Well, look, I think if you really do analyze what an entrepreneur is somebody who creates something. And I would say most entrepreneurs, and that maybe sounds a bit precocious to say it, are artists. And you take a blank sheet of canvas, and you have to fill in that blank sheet of canvas, and you have to get every single little detail right on that canvas. And if you don't get every little detail right, whatever it is you're setting up will not survive. If you get every little detail right, everything from being a wonderful inspirer of people, getting a team to believe in what you're doing, praising, not criticizing, getting out there and letting people know about what it is that you're what it is where it is you're trying to make a difference, then you'll succeed. And but if you don't get all those little details right, you're not going to succeed. And so if I'm on a Virgin plane, I'll have a notebook in my pocket. I'll go and see all the staff. And I'll go and see all the passengers. And at the end of the flight, I'll have on average 20 little things in that notebook. And if you're we all know if you go to a restaurant where the owner is the chef, you're going to get a fantastic service because they'll make sure every detail's right. So if you're running a bigger group of companies, you've got to try to run it as if you were the chef in the restaurant, and you've got to to make sure you care about your people and you care about the details, and then you can have a company that sings.
But as you look back then, I'd be curious to know, because you've done so many things so well, is there something that you regret? Is there something you either did or didn't do that you really feel like was an opportunity missed?
I really don't think so. I mean, I think both of us have, and I expect most people in this room have had extraordinary lives. We're just unbelievably fortunate, the lives we've all led. Most of us have had fun lives. We've thrown ourselves wholeheartedly into things. Sometimes we've fallen flat on our face. We've picked ourselves up. We've learned from that. I once thought we could take on Coca-Cola, and we landed in America with a Sherman tank, and we drove into Times Square. This was before 9/11, and we'd wired up the Coca-Cola sign the night before with petrol, and we went over all these Coca-Cola cans, and they sprayed everywhere, and we turned the barrel of the tank onto the Coca-Cola sign. And as we fired it, the whole sign blew up. This wasn't before 9/11. Anyway, it was, everybody smiled and had a good laugh at the time. But Coca-Cola fired a bigger tank back at us, and we retreated. So not everything succeeded, but it was fun trying.
So, for the entrepreneurs that are here, Richard, we take entrepreneurs at a point where we hope they can scale. So they've already started their businesses, they've had a success, and then what we try to do is help them take that success and really make it something, as we say, high impact with lots of jobs and either countrywide, region-wide, or international reach. What do you think, getting so far is one thing, but that inflection point where you really build something beyond what you thought you could do at the beginning, what's that like, and what advice do you have for people who are sort of facing that moment and the choices that come with it?
Well, I think both stages are critical. I mean, if people can't get over the very first stage, and we're setting up schools of entrepreneurship which are tying into the Endeavour scheme. So our schools of entrepreneurship are taking entrepreneurs, literally off the streets with that first idea, which all of us had, and getting them onto the first run of the ladder, and then handing them over to Endeavour to then take them onto the next stage. And without either of those stages, you're not going to build a great company. And the feedback I get from people I've met, entrepreneurs who've come into contact with Endeavour, is great, and having mentors who can really give you advice is something which is so important, and I suspect a lot of us in this room wouldn't be where we are today without those mentors. But to have an organisation that's going into countries all over the world doing that is fantastic.
It's interesting because actually in thinking about what we do, if there was one single thing that was more important than anything else than we do, is provide mentors to these entrepreneurs. Consistently, they all say of all the services that Endeavour provides, that mentorship is absolutely critical. I want to say thank you for being here, for giving us your insight. I know you arranged for one photo just to say goodbye to the entire Endeavour family, and as you do that, I'd like everyone to give Richard a round of applause and say thank you from all of us. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.